It is an honor to have a chance to conduct an interview with you. Looking at your academic career from undergraduate to now, it is apparent that you have gathered amply significant memories and experiences. Could you please share some of them with us that are quite determining to your career?
I have always been interested in the boundaries where subjects intersect, particularly politics, economics, and morals. That has meant a career studying common markets in Africa and Central America, transnational issues, interdependence, nuclear proliferation, power transitions, and my book, Do Morals Matter? In other words, I have been what Isaiah Berlin calls a fox rather than a hedgehog, who focuses deeply on one thing. Perhaps I could have learned more as a hedgehog, but at least I have never been bored as a fox.
You once claimed that Europe retains impressive power resources. However, with an ongoing refugee crisis, Russia's occupation of eastern Ukraine and illegal annexation of Crimea, the British withdrawal from the EU, and now criticisms against disorganized and slow response in the COVID-19 outbreak, it seems that the EU is losing its own power resources. Do you agree with this criticism? Would you evaluate the situation from the concept of soft power?
Europe has gained soft power by setting an example for the world, but soft power alone is not enough. Europe has not invested enough in its hard power to accompany the soft power, and disunity in the face of the challenges you mentioned further weakens European power.
Your concept of soft power has been a key development with which to understand the last decade of the 20th century and so forth. However, "Is the American century is over?" suggests that you have to restate your opinion because of changes in world politics. Furthermore, you sum up the short answer as follows. The short answer to our question is that we are not entering a post-American world. The American century is not over, but because of transnational and non-state forces, it is definitely changing in important ways.
The short answer to our question is that we are not entering a post-American world. The American century is not over, but because of transnational and non-state forces, it is definitely changing in important ways.
If you do not mind, we would like to ask which transnational and non-state forces you are referencing, and do you believe that they are still relevant or will be relevant in the post-pandemic world order?
Many transnational issues cross borders outside the control of government. They include financial flows, terrorist groups, climate change, and of course, pandemics. The United States cannot solve these problems acting alone. We must learn to think of power with others as well as over others. This will be increasingly true in a post-pandemic world. Environmental globalization obeys the laws of science, not politics.
Since the Obama administration, America seems to be trying to reduce the number of soldiers deployed all over the world. Moreover, they are now reducing the number of soldiers in Syria, emptying the military base in northern Iraq, and cutting a deal with the Taliban in Afghanistan. What would you say if somebody were to claim that the Bringing Democracy mission, which is backed by military operations, is coming to an end?
The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have led to disillusion with the idea that military occupation of poor countries can produce democratization. Even Ronald Reagan said bayonets were not the way to implant democracy. It should be done slowly by soft power, or not at all. But that does not mean the withdrawal of military forces from democratic Europe or Japan, where they play an important role in deterring authoritarian states like Russia and China.
In the 5th chapter of The Paradox of American Power, 2002, you discussed which way America should go, multilateralism or unilateralism. 2 decades have passed since the Bush administration. Could you please reevaluate your primary argument in the book under the most current world affairs? Do you still side with multilateralism? If so, do you think that the Trump administration is on the same page as you?
I still believe in multilateral approaches for the reasons stated above and developed at length in my new book, Do Morals Matter? Unfortunately, Trump is not only not on the same page, he does not open the book.
In 2017, you tracked the development of the soft power concept with the article Soft Power, The Origins and Political Progress of a Concept. It, as you imply, has grown and cannot be held at a constant time and place. To what extent is the concept explanatory in a world taking a path to illiberal tendencies?
Soft power is the ability to get what you want through attraction, rather than coercion or payment. Attraction depends on the mind of the target. Some people are attracted to authoritarians, which means they have soft power. If liberal ideas of freedom become less attractive in other countries, the soft power of democracies will be diminished.
Thank you for your time and sincere answers. We do not want to miss what is essential to you if the previous questions do not cover it. Could you please elaborate on an issue by yourself as a closing question?
Trump is famous for his slogan, America First. All leaders have a responsibility to put their own country's interests first, and Trump is not unique in that. The important moral choice is how broadly or narrowly a leader chooses to define those interests. But the United States responded to COVID-19 with an inclination toward short-term, zero-sum competitive interpretations with too little attention to institutions and cooperation. As I show in my new book, Do Morals Matter? Presidents and foreign policy from FDR to Trump, this administration has interpreted America First narrowly, stepping back from the long-term, enlightened self-interest that marked the American approach designed by FDR, Truman, and Eisenhower after 1945. The Marshall Plan is a good example of using a broad definition of the national interest. It was good for the United States' interest in preventing the Soviet takeover of Western Europe, but it was also good for Europe struggling to recover from the devastation of the Second World War. We can apply that model to the current COVID-19 crisis. Attacks by new viruses may come in waves. In 1918, an influenza epidemic killed more people than died in the horrors of the First World War. Many people thought it had ended when it abated in the summer, but the second wave in the fall of 1918 was more lethal than the first. There is much we still do not know about this new coronavirus, but we must be prepared for a multi-year battle. That will require sharing information, developing and producing therapies and vaccines, and preparing, manufacturing and distributing medical supplies and equipment. It is quite possible that there will be seasonal surges of the virus between the northern and southern hemispheres. When the north thinks it has a respite, the virus, or a mutation, may fill a southern reservoir only to spill northward with the change of seasons. We should have a COVID-19 Marshall Plan for poor countries.